You walk into a room. No one greets you. No one even looks up. But something shifts not around you, inside you. Your shoulders tense. Your energy pulls back. And before you say a word, you already feel smaller. And you think, maybe I'm just overthinking. But you're not. You just entered a room controlled by someone else's presence. That control didn't come from status or speech. It came from frame. They didn't talk louder. They didn't try harder. They simply were in a way that made everyone else adjust. You felt it before. Someone walks in, silent, calm, still, and the energy shifts. People sit straighter, speak softer. The room tightens like it's recalibrating around them. That's not charisma. It's not confidence. It's architecture, frame control, the invisible power that sets the tone before words are even spoken. And here's the hard truth. Most people walk into rooms already surrendered. They react. They explain. They prove. They try to earn space instead of defining it. But you're here to change that. Because power isn't in volume. It's in structure. It's not about being heard. It's about being felt. Napoleon didn't command respect with noise. He entered rooms with stillness, and generals stood without question. He didn't raise his voice, because his presence already carried the answer. And that's what you're here to study. Not how to talk louder, but how to anchor deeper. So if you've ever walked into a space and felt like the energy shifted away from you, stay. Because in the next few minutes, you'll learn what most never do. How to build a presence so grounded, it bends the room before you speak. This isn't a trick. It's the blueprint of psychological power. Subscribe not for more information, but for transformation. Because once you see the frame, you don't follow it. You become it. Ever wonder why some people don't just survive pressure, they thrive in it? Why, when others panic, they calculate? When others freeze, they execute. It's not confidence. It's not luck. It's their mental code. A different operating system. Most people run on emotion. Powerful people run on architecture. They don't wake up and wonder what kind of day it will be. They've already programmed it. First, long-term obsession. Most minds want dopamine, quick wins, something to feel today. But power doesn't care how you feel today. It cares who you'll be 5 years from now. That's why when you talk to someone truly powerful, you feel it. Because their presence isn't reacting to now, it's anchored in where they're going. They're not here for validation. They're here for positioning. Elon Musk wasn't building a car. He was building Mars. While the world debated charging stations, he mapped out interplanetary life. Power doesn't look impressive in the moment. It looks delusional. Until it doesn't. Second, risk calibration. Weak minds avoid all risk. They want comfort dressed as certainty. But power knows the truth. No move is ever safe. So they choose risk, but only when it creates leverage. They don't take chances they haven't studied. They enter battles they've already scoped. When they strike, it's not impulsive. It's surgical. That's why they win. Not because they fight harder, but because they don't waste blood on fights that don't shift power. Third, rapid decision-making. Hesitation is a silent killer. Every delay bleeds advantage. Every pause leaves the door open for someone more decisive. You don't need more time. You need more clarity. And clarity comes from structure, from principles, from frameworks you already built when you weren't under fire. Power doesn't panic, because it doesn't rely on guessing. It's preloaded. So when the storm hits, they're already moving. Fourth, resource focus. They know where their energy goes. And, more importantly, where it doesn't. They don't get pulled into arguments that don't elevate them. They don't obsess over outcomes they can't control. They don't burn energy explaining their worth. They direct their power like a laser. Every word, every silence, every withdrawal is a strategic allocation. You never see them everywhere. You only feel them where it matters. And that's why they dominate. Fifth, strategic vision. Most people see today. Power sees a chessboard. They don't just play the next move. They've already mapped the ending. Their behavior might seem calm, but underneath, they're orchestrating. That one sentence they dropped in the meeting calculated. The pause they took before replying, planned. The way they didn't defend themselves in that argument, intentional. Because they know every action plants a flag. Every response sets a frame. And power doesn't always need to speak. Sometimes, power just needs to be felt. This isn't talent. It's a blueprint, a silent system of psychological infrastructure that lets them move through chaos, unshaken. While the world reacts, they reinforce. While the crowd forgets, they record. While others guess, they design. Power lives in structure, in silent architecture. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it. They don't just think differently. They think structurally. They don't just adapt. They build environments that favor them. They don't just want control. They create systems where control is a byproduct. So, if you've been feeling like you're behind, like others, move faster. Speak stronger. Decide quicker. It's not because they're better. It's because they've been trained. Mentally trained. They've built a code that protects their power even when they're quiet. Even when they seem still. Even when you think they're doing nothing. Because while the world watches the noise, power moves through signal. And the real game is happening in the way they think. No more emotion-led spirals. No more guessing under stress. No more explaining what shouldn't need to be explained. It's time to switch your operating system from reaction to strategy, from emotion to structure, from short-term panic to long-term power. You don't need more motivation. You need a better mental code. And once it's installed, no one can take it from you. Because when your mind becomes the fortress, you don't fear storms anymore. You become the storm. You've seen it. Someone walks into a room. They don't say a word, but everything shifts. The noise softens. Eyes turn. The air thickens. Not because of beauty, not because of fame, but because of presence. This is not charisma. It's psychological weight. And here's what most people miss. Presence is not something you perform. It's something you build. Real presence starts before the room. It starts in how you think, how you stand, how you breathe, how you decide what's worth responding to. Powerful people don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't seek permission from the vibe. They are the vibe. Let's break it down. First, assertiveness is not aggression. Power doesn't yell. It doesn't bark for respect. It simply speaks once, and when it does, you feel the edge behind the calm. The insecure demand, the powerful declare. One time, no repetition, no apology. They trust the silence that follows their words because that's where influence really lands. Second, emotional control. This is the core of presence, because the person who controls their reactions controls the room. Most people walk into a situation and respond to tone, to comments, to energy shifts. But power doesn't respond. It regulates. When they get insulted, they don't flinch. They observe. When they're provoked, they don't explode. They adjust, because they know every reaction gives data away. And when you give too much data, you give up leverage. This is why silence is their superpower. Because nothing scares people more than a person they can't read. Third, presence, mastery. There's a reason some people can walk into a room, and that room adjusts. It's not just body language, it's alignment. Their posture, their pace, their eye contact, their stillness, it's all tuned to a deeper frequency. Think about it. A powerful teacher doesn't scream to control the class. They look up, and suddenly, everyone goes quiet. Why? Because the more grounded your energy, the more unstable theirs becomes. That's why power doesn't move frantically. It moves with gravity. Each step, each turn, each pause is loaded with intention. Fourth, high-impact communication. Power doesn't ramble. It cuts. They don't add words for comfort. They remove words for precision. You'll hear them speak and think, that was short. But it hit. Because powerful communication isn't about filling the air. It's about hitting the nervous system. It's about timing, tone, tension. It's about knowing when to speak and when the silence does more damage. They don't defend their point. They hold it. They don't rush to fill the gap. They let others feel the weight of that gap. And when they finally speak, it lands harder because you were already leaning in. Fifth, influence tactics. The weak persuade. The powerful position. They don't beg for agreement. They don't sell their value. They create an emotional context where people believe it was their choice all along. That's the difference. They don't say, do what I say. They create an environment where the only logical move is the one they preloaded. It's not control. It's design. You think you're making a decision, but you're actually choosing from a menu they wrote. Power isn't loud. It's structural, and you feel it most when it says the least. You ever walk away from a conversation and only later realize you were being influenced the whole time? That's it. That's the signature of high-level power. It doesn't push. It frames. So if you've ever sat in a room and felt invisible, felt like you had value but no one could see it, you're not broken. You're just untrained. If that line hit, don't wait. Hit subscribe now, because the rooms that ignore you now won't be able to stop watching later. Let's keep going. Power is not something you take. It's something you build, brick by brick, day by day, interaction by interaction. Most people want influence fast. They want to be seen, validated, followed. But the powerful, they move like architects. Every step is structural. Every move is a layer. And the foundation always begins with this network engineering, but not the kind most people think. See, the weak collect people. The powerful position them. They don't network for numbers. They build maps, strategic connections, nodes of influence. Each relationship has a purpose. Each interaction is designed, calculated, observed. They don't try to please everyone. They identify leverage points, and they cultivate them quietly. Think about it. The most powerful person in the room isn't the one who talks the most. It's the one whose presence makes others shift. The one everyone checks before they speak. That's not charisma. That's position. And it's earned through value creation. Real value doesn't need to explain itself. It doesn't beg. It doesn't promote. It becomes essential. The powerful make themselves unreplaceable, not because they're liked, but because removing them would collapse the system. They hold the keys, not because they asked for them, but because over time, they became the only ones who could open the door. Imagine someone you dislike, but can't get rid of. Why? Because they built something you depend on. That's power. And it has nothing to do with personality. It has everything to do with architecture. Next, authority building. But let's be clear. Authority has nothing to do with job titles. Nothing to do with followers or status. Real authority is built through perception control. It's about how people frame you in their minds. Do they see you as competent, as necessary, as someone who doesn't chase but is chased? That perception is sculpted carefully, consistently, through behavior, consistency, and control. When you speak, do people stop? When you leave, do people follow? Because the most powerful don't ask for loyalty. They create emotional gravity. People align because it feels natural, because the frame is already set. Now we move to influence expansion. This is where the quiet climb becomes loud, but not because you're louder, because your effect is. True power doesn't multiply through your voice. It multiplies through others. You don't need to be everywhere if your impact is. The powerful create echo chambers around them. People repeat their ideas, act in alignment, protect their reputation, and they do it willingly, because the power player planted a seed, and that seed grew inside others. You've seen it happen. A person walks into an industry. They don't push. They don't promote. They just deliver. And quietly their name starts to circulate. People start referencing them. Doors open. And by the time everyone notices, they're already embedded in the system. That's how real power climbs. It doesn't knock. It becomes the door. Now here's the part no one teaches. This kind of climb is invisible to the untrained eye. People will call you lucky, or manipulative, or think you just happen to be in the right place. But they don't see the strategy, the silence, the patterns behind your presence, because power doesn't come from control. It comes from structure, from being the person who's calm when others panic, precise when others guess, anchored when others sway. It's not loud. It's inevitable. And here's something deeper. When you build this kind of power, you lose things. You lose the need to explain. You lose the desire to be liked. You lose the urge to prove. And what you gain is leverage, the ability to move the room without entering it, to shape the outcome without forcing it. Because when you build slow, when you move with intention, when you sacrifice short-term noise for long-term design, you don't just win, you reshape the game. And people won't even know what changed. Only that you were there, and now nothing works the same without you. So if you're climbing now, and no one sees you, good. If you're building something no one understands yet, keep going. If you feel like the world hasn't noticed you yet, perfect. Because real power doesn't show up early. It arrives when the structure is ready to hold it. You are not late. You are underground. And when you surface, they won't ask who you are. They'll ask how they missed you for so long. Because you didn't just arrive. You became the frame. And once you're the frame, you don't chase doors anymore. You are the door. Power isn't just something you gain. It's something you must retain. And most people don't. Not because they weren't smart. Not because they weren't strong. But because they misread the board. They forget that the higher you climb, the more invisible the attacks become. In the world of power, no one says they're coming for your spot. They smile. They agree. They wait. That's why loyalty can't be emotional. Loyalty must be engineered. See, weak leaders expect loyalty from love, from charisma, from shared history. The powerful, they, build a loyalty infrastructure. Every person around them benefits from the structure staying intact. If the empire falls, so does their comfort, their access, their safety. That's not friendship. That's architecture. You don't want people who like you. You want people who can't afford to lose you. Next, opponent handling. The powerful don't eliminate enemies by fighting them. They repurpose them. They turn threats into assets. They offer rope, not resistance. Ever seen a CEO keep a known rival close, not because they trust them, but because distance is more dangerous? The enemy in the room is easier to monitor than the one hiding in shadows. The powerful convert enemies into messengers, sometimes into mirrors, sometimes into nothing at all. Because power isn't about proving, it's about positioning. Now let's talk about crisis. Everyone fears scandal. The powerful use it. When accusations fly, they don't retreat. They reframe. A scandal isn't always a stain. Sometimes it's a spotlight. They step into the fire, not to explain, but to redefine. They don't hide. They redirect. The narrative becomes theirs. The public doesn't see a fall. They see a pivot, a rise from ashes. Because the powerful understand this control of meaning is more important than control of facts. Now, here's the most subtle rule of retention. Never look like you're trying to hold on. Desperation leaks. Gripping too tightly makes people question why. It signals weakness, fear. But those who truly own the game, they don't hold the throne with both hands. They sit loosely, like they could leave any second but choose to stay. And that creates a paradox. Because the moment people sense you don't need the power, they'll do anything to make sure you keep it. It's no longer about dominance. It's about frame control. And the highest frame is calm. No panics. No defense. No overreaction. Just stillness, precision, and the unshakable message: I'm not clinging, I'm commanding. Because the strongest players never look like they're fighting to stay in the game. They look like the game was built around them. True power isn't something you swing. It's something you reflect. Because power doesn't corrupt. It reveals. It shows you. You. Not when you're struggling, but when no one can stop you. That's the real test. The one most people fail. See, weak people use power to punish, to silence, to inflate themselves. But ethical power isn't weak. It's precise. It doesn't dominate. It reconstructs. You don't need to crush. You redirect. You don't impose. You elevate. Because when your power is rooted in fear, it's fragile. But when it's rooted in self-mastery, it lasts. So ask yourself, if no one could stop you, what would you become? Would you build or destroy? Would you elevate others or erase them? If your presence made people smaller, was it really power or just projection? The highest power doesn't seek control. It seeks alignment. It doesn't command attention. It commands respect without needing to ask for it. And when you master that level, you stop chasing the crown, because you realize you are the throne. Let's rewind. You've seen the blueprint. Power isn't just posture. It's a system. It starts with how you think, then how you walk, then how you influence. From thought to presence to structure to strategy to silence. This isn't about ego. It's about agency. The ability to shape energy, to walk into a room and tilt the balance without ever raising your voice. You've learned that power doesn't shout, it frames. It doesn't take, it builds. It doesn't react, it orchestrates. And now you have a choice. Keep watching, keep nodding, keep understanding. Or start training in silence, where real power is forged. Because what you just felt wasn't information. It was transmission, a shift, a resonance. And if that resonance didn't just teach you about power, but made you feel it, then it's time. Subscribe. Train with us. Because real power isn't shown, it's sensed. And the ones who sense it rule quietly, but dominate loudly